Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. Click all the way through. Pay the $2.99. You can cancel it at any time. This is less than a little thing you get at Starbucks. So check it out. Off the Floor. 10 different channels. Heat talk all day long. Updates there before you get them anywhere else. It's also a great place if you've missed everything on social media. We post it all there, so you can go through and get all your Heat information in one place. Again, check it out Off the Floor. Click on the link in the description. We've got a new sponsor of Five on the Floor. Welcome to the team, Cousins USA, family owned and operated since 1996. They can service both residential and commercial moves, whether you're going across town, across the state, across the country, and even across the globe. They've got a 15,000 square foot private warehouse in Lauderhill. The number one priority is transparency, being honest with their customers, and they've got very low turnover with most of their movers working for them for over 10 years. So check them out at Cousins Moving. That's at Cousins Moving on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Or visit the website at www.cousinsusa.com/5RSN. Why 5RSN? Because you get 5 free wardrobe boxes with your next move. Just mention 5 reasons or use that code. And now, today's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust.
You sound scared.
It's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. We got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Make sure to check out the last episode that I did with our guy Eternal Bass from Playback and Off the Floor about which players might complement the new big front line, the one that Eric Spoelstra rolled out the other night of Ware, Bam, and Jovic. But of course, we can never just follow one story here. So we had that the other night with that really rousing two overtime win against Orlando, which was surprising, down double digits late. Spoelstra stayed primarily with the same 5-man group for the entire 2 overtimes and was rewarded for it. And now tonight, Alex and I and Brady will be at the arena for Cleveland's return. Of course, the Heat beat Cleveland earlier this season. No Garland tonight for the Cavs, so they have a bit of a hole in their backcourt, but they've been the best team in the East pretty much for the duration of the season. So we'll see how the new look Heat look against them. And of course, Jimmy Butler, nothing really new there at the moment, except for the talk that Golden State may get involved, which would be funny, Alex, because we go back to the very first episode we did on this in December, before I had no longer have my joy comments and all of that, and this became a total circus. The team that you and I talked about the most was the team that we talked about the most at the beginning was Golden State, and now here we are again, talking about the Warriors and whether the Heat have loosened their trade demands enough that Golden State gets in the picture here. Of course, Memphis, Phoenix have been some of the teams we've been talking about, but as of now, and we're talking here at 1:40 on Wednesday afternoon, there is no trade of Jimmy Butler. He is still suspended. That part of it's not going to change anytime soon. Of course, suspended for a minimum of 5 games. Of course, the trade deadline's coming up on February 6th. But nothing is ever quiet. So while this was all going on, the report from Shams that De'Aaron Fox, something that we've talked about, that this might be the next guy, De'Aaron Fox is looking to get out of Sacramento. Now, the Kings have been playing better since they fired their coach, Mike Brown, but Fox still wants out. His agent is Rich Paul from Clutch. I know that Heat fans clutch their pearls whenever Clutch is mentioned, because the pun intended, because of the history with the Heat. But I can tell you the Heat don't have a problem with Clutch. In fact, not only did they sign Alec Burks this past offseason, which again is a small signing, and he's a Clutch guy, but I've been told by people around the Heat, they feel like Rich Paul's grown up a lot. Like, they don't have a problem. They will work with particular agents. So I know that this is, even if they've had issues with him in the past, and even some agents they supposedly have the best relationships with. That has gone south at times, and there's one in Heat history, and I don't want to get into all the details of it here for a lot of reasons, but that things went south whenever contract negotiation time came. So they'll deal with all kinds of different agents to try to get a deal done. So I would not look at clutch as the impediment here. The impediments, Alex, and we're going to talk about whether or not it's worth it to go after De'Aaron Fox now. That's the context of this episode. At the same time as you're looking to move Jimmy Butler. So here's what I would see to be some of the impediments here. Number one, the Heat don't appear to be his first choice. It doesn't mean he wouldn't go to Miami. Obviously, he has a very close relationship with Bam. Like, this is more than just, him and Dame being like, he played college basketball with Bam. Like, they are very, very close. And he has spent time in Miami over the summers. At least one summer that I know of, about 3 years ago, he was here quite a bit. And he fits the category of the type of player that the Heat would be looking for because he's Bam's age, so he's on the timeline in a way that Jimmy was not. He would be on the older end of the timeline based on some of the other younger players that they have. But it does appear that he wants to go to San Antonio first. And of course, the attraction there is they have Wemby. They've got 9 tradable first round picks. It's another organization like Miami that has a history of success. And he has family. I believe his wife actually is from San Antonio or spent a lot of time in San Antonio. So there's a connection. And Fox is from Houston. So he knows Texas. Um, Houston's another team that's been mentioned as a possibility for him in the past. So you're dealing with some things that are positives in the Heat side, and there are some negatives. Now, we'll get into the contract part of this. You could sign him, and then you could extend him afterwards. He is due for a big extension in 26. Um, and of course, that's a summer that the Heat want to be as flexible as possible, but they would want to be flexible for a player like De'Aaron Fox, although maybe even a level above if you thought you actually had a shot at Luka or some of the others if he was ultimately going to be dealt. So there's a lot of factors involved. I'll just ask you this. Is De'Aaron Fox the type of player that the Heat should be going after? Because I'll start this, Alex, by saying I don't think this is going to happen. And I know Heat fans are going to get on me about that, but I'm lowering expectations on this, even though I know that even when the Heat started the exploration for Jimmy and looking legitimately at trades, it was, well, we want to be as flexible as possible. We don't want to take long-term contracts. We want to try to get some assets back. But obviously, if we can get a star, then we would look at that first. There did not appear to be a star available at the time. Now there may be. Is De'Aaron Fox the type of star that you would go after?
Not a tough question. He does fit the bill. Like the kind of all the parameters that you've laid out that the Heat have been looking for, like everything that we know about them just in general, having watched them and having just observed them operate the way that they do. Like he's very much that type of player for them. Like it's obvious here. Like it's very convenient timing wise that all of a sudden he becomes available, not much long after this whole Jimmy thing unfolds. And I think I'd be, like you guys have said, I'd be shocked if they didn't, try to kind of dip their toe in the waters here and see what can happen. I think at this point it's about, if you're a Heat fan, it's maybe the Spurs and Kings don't work something out, right? And then maybe that's where the Heat can kind of take advantage and De'Aaron is willing to come play with Bam in Miami and thinks that, the young core is promising. I think that they can be a competitor in an East that's not as much of a bloodbath as the West, where the Kings are barely able to stay in the playing race, even with how well they've been playing. Like, yeah, there's a case to be made there for sure, for not only for the Heat, where it feels more obvious, right? Because they want to go back to competing. They don't want to bottom out. So that's an obvious yes. But even for Fox, I think you can make the case that Miami is a good fit for him. Of course, San Antonio is in a whole different trajectory right now, a whole different stage of their build. And Victor is exactly the type of budding superstar that you build around and try to add a star player alongside, even if he is in his second season. He's just that good. Everybody sees it. The word generational gets thrown around a lot in NBA discourse. It's not an exaggeration whatsoever when it comes to Victor. He is maybe the definition of, the modern generational player, right? So it's very much like obvious why he would want to play there. You mentioned the Texas stuff. So yeah, like that stuff, you have to keep your expectations low if you're a Heat fan, but it makes so much sense for the Heat to try to, get in on this. And I'm with you that it's like, I don't know what can happen, but there's a couple of different routes that they can, maybe try to dangle the Kings with and kind of lure them in with, where it's like, hey, you guys, what did they only make one playoffs? Did they just make the one and then they got
Yeah,
eliminated in the
well,
play-in? Do
no,
I have that right? Or did they make a
yeah,
second one?
I think it was playoffs and then play in. They had the whole lighting the beam thing 2 years ago, and of course that was with Mike Brown, and he won Coach of the Year. It seemed like Fox wasn't thrilled with Brown by the end, which is one of the reasons Brown was pushed out. Fox made some comments kind of about like, this stuff happens at the end of it. I think when we talk about San Antonio, what's interesting here is the couple of things I've heard about the Spurs throughout the years from people who covered the NBA since Wemby came in. One is they've done a lot of research about Wemby and and about players of his build. Like you said, he's generational, but you can look at a Yao Ming, you can look at some of the other guys who were sort of outsized tall and had were build around type players, and most of them don't last in the NBA that long. That combined with the fact that Victor wants to win, like he is not one of these that's going to be happy compiling stats. I'm not saying he's a problem. He's actually the opposite. Like winning comes first for him. Highly intelligent, basketball IQ off the charts, all that sort of stuff. I mean, he's exactly the type of person the NBA should want to build around too. But they know they need to win quicker rather than later with him. Like they are going to try to expedite this process. Now the word was Trae Young was going to be a target for them, but what I've heard over the past year was they like Fox better than Trae. And so this is an opportunity I think both sides have been looking for, and that's why when I talk about it, I'm not going to get overly optimistic about the Heat's chances here because this feels like more of a Spurs thing than a Heat thing where it goes. But you have to explore it. I'm with you. You have to explore it, and then the question becomes, to what end? Like, what are you willing to give up? I guess
And
the
what do the
question
Kings
is,
want?
what do the Kings want? Let's start here. Let me ask you this. Let's try to do these rapid fire. You ready? Would you be willing to blow your 26 cap space for De'Aaron Fox?
Yes.
Yes or
That's
no?
not even
Okay.
that's an easy one. I think, like you already mentioned it. It was Fox, it's Luka. I think KD might be available. That's obviously a different one. He's gonna be like 38 or whatever at the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of those guys is off the board in Fox. I don't know how much anybody can feel great about Luka becoming a free agent and signing with Miami. Like there's a maybe 3% chance of that happening at best. Maybe I'm being harsh, but yeah, and then the KD thing, like I mentioned, is a whole different story. So yeah, I think I was already kind of low on the idea of something happening huge for them in 26. Of course, not that they can't make it happen, but now with Fox off the board, I think it's easy. Like he's one of those guys you go all in for now and 26, in my opinion.
Well, Pat's philosophy in the new era, and I know that this era may be swinging back a little bit, that there may be a little bit more of a lean on free agency, which the Heat prefer. But the philosophy has been go get the guy a year early. Now I know Heat fans are going to say, well, they haven't done that, right? Like other than the Jimmy situation, which he became he they couldn't agree on an extension in Philadelphia. That's what happened, and then Miami went out and got him after they tried to get him from Minnesota during the previous season. But the idea is to go get the guy early. So I don't think they would have any problem blowing up the cap space for somebody like this, particularly if it's somebody that Bam wanted that fit Bam's timeline. So let's get into the two factors on this, and I will do one before the break and one after. What do we think Sacramento wants? And then what are you willing to actually give up if you're the Heat? Because I put this on Twitter today, and I'm just going to tease it. Heat fans, at least the ones who are on social media, who are doing the jersey swaps and complaining that the Heat don't go get stars, are always talking about that. And then when you ask them, are you willing to give up this guy or that guy? The majority of them say no. You cannot have it both ways. So I put this on Twitter today. Would you be willing to give up Kel'el Ware? I don't want you to answer right now. I want to get to the Kings side of this first, but just think on it, and we'll do it after the break. Would you be willing to give up Kel'el Ware to get De'Aaron Fox? I said, I'm just trying to see something. 75% so far. We're up to 1,700 votes, okay, in about 30 minutes. Say no. Say no. These same people, a lot of these same people are going to say, oh, you can't get a star. Because apparently, I guess if you're Miami, you can get stars for nothing in the eyes of a lot of fans.
Yeah, that's what they think too.
Well, there's some fans who do think Miami thinks that, but I'm just saying you got to give up something to get something. Okay, now the Heat have spoiled people because they literally gave up Josh Richardson and got off of Hassan Whiteside's contract to get Jimmy, and they got three pieces, two that actually contributed in a significant way, Crowder and Iguodala. by getting off of the contracts of Winslow, Waiters, and James Johnson. So the Heat fleecing teams on some trades has given, I think, fans the idea that they should be able to fleece in every situation. And of course, it doesn't work that way. And with Dame, it never even got that far because Portland wouldn't even entertain it. But let me ask you this: if you're Sacramento, you drafted Fox, you drafted Halliburton, you chose Fox, you traded Halliburton for Sabonis. Okay, this is an organization that didn't make the playoffs for what, 15 straight years, then finally started to. The owner is the same as it's been in recent years, but they've made a series of bad decisions. This is the same organization that passed on Luka, although that was more of a Vlade thing at the time. What are you looking for? Like, does Miami even have? Because the Spurs have 9 tradable first round picks. The Heat cannot get in that class for that.
And that's, what I was actually going to get to before when I asked you that question about how many times the Kings actually made the playoffs. I get confused because of the play-in stuff, but I feel like they got a taste of what the playoffs were like after missing it for so many years, however long it was. It was damn near 20 years that they didn't make the playoffs. Or it was like 15 years, whatever it was, right? Like, I think if I'm the Kings, you got to imagine this, like you mentioned, you traded Halliburton years ago. You're going to have to trade Fox now. Those were like the draft picks that you absolutely hit on, and you give them credit for hitting on those picks. And they got a great player who's been great for them in Sabonis out of one of them, of course. Give them credit for that. But as a result of all of this, is there not something to be said about maybe they want to compete and maybe they want to make the playoffs again because they know that reset, like going into an organizational reset and maybe going the other way and selling DeRozan and selling like a Monk, or I don't know, like players that might have value around the league to win now teams, that doing all of that might not lead you anywhere when it's all said and done. Now, I think there is something to be said about that. And I think Windhorst on the Hoop Collective podcast, mentioned that too, that the Kings, to a certain extent, they do want players. And again, you go back to maybe the Spurs and Kings can't work something out. That's about the hope that you have. If that's about all the hope you have if you're a Heat fan at this point, because what the Kings can do is, like you mentioned, they have a whole lot of picks that they can offer. And I'm sure the Kings want picks in return for a guy like De'Aaron Fox, right? That's part of it. But the players, right? The players part of it. The Spurs have a few kind of low middling contracts that they can throw in there. De'Aaron Fox, I think, makes about $35 million this year. So they've got, Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Zach Collins. I believe Chris Paul can be thrown in there as well. Like, these are all different contracts that can make the money work. And those are all like decent rotation players at worst, right? So maybe the Kings are fine with that. They're fine with taking a few rotation players back and a bunch of picks. And it's like, okay, that's a decent package. Like, we've got a whole lot of picks. We've got veterans that'll help us make the playoffs now. And maybe that's it. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. But, and this but is very important. What if they're not big fans of that? Of just like, okay, Keldon getting Harrison Barnes back, Zach Collins, or even Chris Paul. Like, what if they're not fans of that? What if they start going and asking for Stephon Castle, and they're like, no, we need Stephon Castle back in this deal, right? And I know they drafted another like defensive point guard in Devin Carter that they're excited about. I don't think you can't play those two together. That would probably be a fun backcourt to watch if you're, a Kings fan. It would.
We'll get to we'll get to it on the other side because I know where he's going with this, but I want to get into also the Heat side of this and what they would be willing to do. Let's get to that in a second. Do you want to mention another great sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network? Wow, I feel like we're doing like all moving real estate stuff. I wonder what we're signaling here. Our friends over at Real Estate Shop, Javier and Amanda, they're the team that you want to reach out to if you're looking to buy or sell real estate here in South Florida. Honest, approachable, smart, nimble, and protective of their clients. Serve the entire Tri-County area based in Broward, but they also, like I said, serve Dade and Palm Beach as well. The real estate shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because they got a deep understanding of the local market. They're dedicated to ensuring a smooth and enjoyable home buying and home selling journey. So reach out to them. Javier, again, they're both big Miami Heat fans. We've had Javier here on the podcast. You can find them at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor, again, at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. That's 954-268-9812. They sponsor our Defending the House segment, and we're going to talk about a couple of the players who've been defending the house for the Miami Heat. They're Defending the House segment on the postgame show. Again, find them at Real Estate Shop. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com. All right, before you went mute there. I I got what you were saying in terms of whether or not they'd actually be interested in what San Antonio has to offer. It does seem like they are motivated to make a move. Sacramento has made some aggressive trades early. Prior, instead of waiting, they understand that as a market that it's difficult to get players to go there in free agency, even though they do have a new downtown arena. I would expect them to try to get what they can before the deadline and move on from Fox. Let's tie this to the Heat part of this, though. The Heat have a contract that would make it easier to make a Fox deal happen. It's Jimmy Butler's. Do you see any situation, before we get into what you would move and what you wouldn't, do you see any situation where Jimmy could be moved as part of a deal that gets Fox to Miami? Or maybe it's a multi-part thing. Obviously, it's probably be multi-team anyway, but a multi-part thing where you take assets that you get for dealing Jimmy and you get them to Sacramento, because that feels like the more likely part of
Mhm.
this. And the Heat have done deals like this before. They are experienced in these kind of deals. That seems to me like one way to get something done. Again, if you're just trying to transform your team in one fell swoop, and then the question comes in, what other assets are you going to have to offer? And do those include guys like Khalil Ware or Tyler Hero?
Yeah, and it's honestly probably better off that my mic randomly disconnected in my last take there, because I think what the next part of that point that I was making, as far as like what the Kings would want, very much relates to what you're asking here. Like the Jimmy thing is very convenient. He obviously is a huge contract, and the Kings would have to make up the whatever it is, 13 mil and differences there. And that's where it's good that you mentioned other teams, because it could be a multi-team deal. Like if this were to happen, right, or if this were to become viable, it could be a multi-team deal either way, whether it's Jimmy to Sacramento or, Jimmy to another team, he getting pieces back. Not saying it's realistic, not saying it's going to happen. Obviously not. What I'm saying is there are multiple different routes that the Heat can make this happen. And it's about, again, what do the Kings want? And I think the scenario at this point is like, if you go back to what I was saying before, if they want Stephon Castle really bad, along with, a whole haul of picks, along with multiple of their veteran players, and the Spurs are like, okay, no, that's just too much, right? Like that's the situation you hope for. And then from there, you pivot to, hey, we've got Jimmy Butler. That's somebody who, if you're trying to make the playoffs, guess like Jimmy is going to help you do that. He's probably the best available player out there right now. And, like it makes a whole lot of sense for them. The other scenario you pointed out, where it's not Jimmy going to Sacramento, which by the way, Sam Amick did say that he heard that along with Memphis, Sacramento was the other team that
That
Jimmy's
he would
people
not
were
go to.
saying, yeah, that
Yes.
he don't trade for me. So that already kind of, that shuts that part down, because we know how adamant, they've been about these things in these cities. So that part of it is shut down, right? The other part where you mentioned Jimmy gets rerouted in a multi-team deal and you get back a bunch of stuff, and maybe you combine that stuff with your stuff. That's probably the
Mhm.
most viable scenario. But when you start doing that, like you're talking about a package centered around, whatever picks you get back for him, and then a combination of your, young core. Are you going to be able to put a better offer than San Antonio? I don't think so. Like they're going to have a lot more picks. The difference would be like, hey, they're not giving us Castle, right? If you're Sacramento, they're not giving us
Mm.
Castle. Maybe we can get picks and a few good young players right now, like Ware and Jovic, whether or not you're willing to offer them as a Heat fan or, the Heat organization themselves. But that is like, I think the route where it could happen. It's like, they're not giving us the combination of young players and picks. We don't just want picks and these salaries. Like it would have to be something like that. That's really the only hope you've got at this point. I think if you're a Heat fan when it comes to Fox.
Well, let's start here. I don't think there's any way Jimmy Butler ends up in Sacramento. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't see it. I don't think
Aggregate it.
that's if he's not willing to go to Memphis, then why would he be willing to go to Sacramento? The chances of winning right away. Now, he has a friendship with DeRozan. I know that. We've always talked about whether or not they could share the floor together. Um, I don't know that Butler, Sabonis, DeRozan, and some of the young players,
Unless
whatever else they.
Sacramento maybe guarantees the extension for Jimmy. Maybe
But
that
what?
changes.
But what? I don't think so. I know Memphis would not. We've talked about why, because they have to extend Jaren Jackson Jr. They've already extended Bane. They've already extended Ja. I don't see that they would do it, but I would be surprised if Sacramento would do it. Their owner Vivek has been willing to spend some money. Seems again like they have the taste of the playoffs. They want to continue, but Jimmy in Sacramento does not seem to me like viable. It does seem like you're getting asset. You would be getting assets and then combining those assets with your own assets. And I'll just start here. I know some Heat fans will say, well, if you can get off a Rozier's deal, you might be willing to give up some other players. I don't think that getting off Rozier's deal is that big a priority for them because they get off of it in 2026 anyway. It's an expiring next year at roughly $24 million. He's not going to earn those incentives, it doesn't look like, but at roughly $24 million. So it may be movable, as Duncan's contract may be movable. I mean, Duncan almost ended up in Sacramento this offseason, actually. That was a trade that we talked about on Off the Floor. So, and he's going to have a partial guarantee next year. You're going to have some money that you can move next season into 2026, and Rozier may be part of that. I guess I'll start here. Okay, let's draw the line on this without saying you're getting off a Rozier. If you're giving up Jimmy, you're getting back De'Aaron Fox. Is there any way that you're including Kel'el Ware in a trade?
Is there any way? Yeah. Would I actually do it? Tough question. It really is a tough question. I think it's not only because nobody wants to trade Ware right now. Like, he's awesome. My nickname for him, and this is not any sort of shade, is the Band-Aid. Just because he's coming, like this Band-Aid of that Kel'el Ware is just right at the right time with
I prefer Beware, by the way.
No,
I
there's
know
way better nicknames. I'm not saying this is the
Yes.
best one. This is just like my own thing for him because I think it's so like the Heat have gotta love that this Ware thing is happening like right in the middle of all the ugliness where Heat fans can kind of
right.
Exactly. It's like it's what everybody wanted to see. Exactly. They had wanted to see it happen. Everybody had been pushing for the big ball lineup. So it's not only an exciting young player, it's like exactly everybody's agenda, right? So many fans clamoring for this. So it's just like perfect timing. But no, he is obviously a very good young prospect, really exciting, has a lot more room to grow, and is still really good, as a rookie. So nobody wants to trade Ware. I wouldn't want to trade Kel'el Ware either. I think you consider it if you're trying to get back, if you're the Heat and you're trying to get back to a contention window. But then the question becomes, if you're trading all of these good young players, right, along with Jimmy, it's in a scenario.
Aren't you back
like
in square one, Alex? Though that's my thing. Like, so you're swapping out Jimmy for Fox, who's much younger. Obviously, doesn't come with quite the headaches that Jimmy comes with, but has also never proven what Jimmy has proven at the highest level. Like, we can't forget that. Like, I'm not.
But Jimmy
Obviously, I
also didn't have
understand
quite the resume that he does now before he got here. But I understand.
No, I know, but he also. Oh no, but by then Jimmy was what, 29, 2 years older than Fox is now, and by that time he had taken a Minnesota team to the playoffs that had not gone to the playoffs before. He also was the best player on Philadelphia in the postseason on a team that included two former top 3 picks in Embiid and Simmons. So I don't want to shade
LeBron
Jimmy.
in Chicago.
Correct. I don't want to shade Jimmy in that regard. Whatever has gone on lately, that what they now we didn't think necessarily he'd become what he became in Miami. I think the Heat did have something to do with that. I also think Jimmy rose his level. I think it was both of them in the same way that LeBron. I think that it was a perfect fit for a while for both of them. But Fox has not done what Jimmy. Fox has not taken over playoff series to the degree that Jimmy has, or playoff series after playoff series after playoff series. Okay, so I just want to. You're not necessarily upgrading there. You're upgrading from a youth perspective. You're getting on Bam's timeline. You're getting somebody who may want to be here longer than it turns out Jimmy has because of the contractual issues. But you are, in a sense, replacing one for another, and the guy you're bringing in has not proven it. But also, if you get rid of Ware, then you're kind of resetting. You're back to being a small team again. Smaller. You're swapping out Butler for Fox. So let me go to the next. So let me put it this way. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And that I wouldn't do it. And I'm with 75% of Heat fans on this, but of course I'm gonna then later say that I wouldn't do it, and that's one of the reasons they couldn't get it done if that's the case. Whereas Heat fans are gonna forget that conveniently and just say that the front office is incompetent. I wouldn't do it because to me, it's harder to get the type of player that Ware is. The type of player. De'Aaron Fox is a top 10 point guard. We agree on that? He's top 10?
Mm-hmm.
Is he clearly top 5?
I don't know about that.
Okay. So, I mean, to me, if he's clearly he's a very good player, and he has the potential to be very good defensively in the Heat system. Like, De'Aaron Fox has defensive tools. This is one of the differences between him and Dame. There are two key differences when people talked about Dame. Yes, Dame has proven it at the highest level in the playoffs, although some of that's overstated because he's also had some bad series. But when he's been matched up with Drew Holiday in particular. But obviously, Dame has played at a very high level on the biggest stage at times. Okay, and Dame isn't one of the best volume shooters and depth shooters in NBA history, but they had concerns about the age and they had concerns about the defense as it related both to the contract. In Fox's case, you don't have a concern about the age and you don't have a concern about the defense
And
as
they
long
were
as he's
still
motivated.
willing to throw in their young players at the time who they valued a lot for Dame. So if you're taking away those negatives,
Some
do
of
you think
them,
they
some of
wouldn't
them,
be?
and where was not a real thing yet. Where was a potential 2025 pick who you didn't know,
No,
2024
but
pick who you didn't
I
know who
mean
he
like
was going to be.
like there were I know that they were trying to not trade both, but they were willing to trade Jovic and Jaquez, right? Or at least at the very worst,
They
one
were
of them, which they
open.
were very high on.
They were
But maybe
open, and
not as high on where.
obviously Tyler. Now, let me go to this one.
Yeah.
If you could keep Ware, would you include Tyler? And you're swapping out Kentucky guard for Kentucky guard because I see some Heat fans saying this, and I also say no.
I don't okay. Let's do something here, right? Let's separate these two things because I think there's some big differences in these two scenarios
Mhm.
here, right? If you're trading for De'Aaron Fox, you're trying to compete again. So I think
Right.
trading a Tyler Hero who finally blossomed into this star, right? Is this budding
Mhm.
star, and maybe it's not, maybe Heat fans are like, okay, this is the best he's gonna get. You think Fox is better? I get that thinking. It's not like, oh, Tyler Hero is so much better than Fox, I wouldn't trade for him. That is not the thinking here. My thinking is, what's the point? If you're gonna trade
Mhm.
Tyler, you're not only are you going back to square one, right? And I'm sure you're gonna get stuff for Jimmy as well, and maybe they can do another trade to get winning players with some of the stuff they get back for Jimmy. I understand, right? Like this is a complex scenario, but if you're trading
Mhm.
Tyler, it just feels like you're taking that step back, right? You're going 2 steps forward, 1 step back, however you want to say it. I'm going back here to my, leaning into the character when it comes to messing up popularly used expressions and sayings. But I think you're taking the step back if you trade Tyler. The Ware thing to me is an easier question just because for as much as I love Ware, and I would not want to trade him if I'm the Heat either. I'm trying to let me make that clear. But let's say it comes down to that. San Antonio, for whatever reason, they just couldn't come to an agreement with Sacramento. And that is like the piece that they're just not budging on. I think a lot of fans would end up, like,
Do you think Ware could play next to Sabonis?
I mean, that's a good point. Honestly, I wasn't even considering that at all. I was just thinking about it from like the asset perspective, where like he's just a very good
Mhm.
player.
No,
I wasn't even
I'm
thinking
asking.
about it. But you're right. That's I
Maybe
don't
he
know about
could.
that.
I mean, Sabonis
Maybe.
has played before at times, so I mean,
They could put
it's
him in the
possible.
same role they got Bam in right now, where he's initiating the
Right.
handoff stuff closer to the top of the key and where it's just down there. I think they could make that work. It's more about just like getting the best asset, I think, and less about the basketball.
Mhm.
That's 1,000% a valid point.
All right. So let
But
me
I'm
go to this one. Let me go to this one.
one quick point. One quick point. The last thing I want to say here, the where if you're for because you're basically saying forget everything on this other side, right? Forget everything on the other
Mhm.
side of where's potential and everything about the big ball. We're trying to win now. So I think trading Tyler it doesn't serve either. It doesn't serve either agenda. I think you're hurting the win now thing. Even though I know a lot of people are still skeptical about how much Tyler can help a playoff team and all of that, but you're trading a very good player. I think you're hurting that agenda, and then you're also like, I don't know. I don't think you're getting kind of the worst of both worlds there. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I think like with Ware, it's more about the possibilities of the future, right?
Mhm.
And I think that you can kind of trade away for Fox if you're trying to convince yourself that you want to go back to competing. But I do get that would suck for Heat fans who just got the taste of the big ball and all of that, right? And it's like, oh, boom, it's over. We're going
Well, I
back
mean,
to
I think
contending. You got Fox, but the big ball is over.
if you had said to Heat fans, we're going to be moving off of Jimmy and Tyler and bringing in De'Aaron Fox, if you said that a year ago, I don't think Heat fans would have been down with that. So let's just throw this one, and I think this is an easier sell. Okay, if I mean, I like Nico a lot. Okay, I do. I think there's a lot of potential there for him, particularly with the ball in his hands as a facilitator. We got a little taste of the Nico Ware Bam lineup, and I think there's a natural chemistry with him and Ware. But to me, that's the line. I think if you had to include Nico and Jaquez, to me, I absolutely would include. I absolutely would include. And he's had big games against Sacramento also. So
Is that a
it's funny
firm
that he
line?
would actually. It's no. I would trade Jaquez, and I would be very open to trading Jovic, even though I really think Jovic could be a cornerstone piece here. But
So where
I just
no
think
go?
no go.
Okay.
Because it's so difficult to find someone like that. And I know people say, well, he found Derek Lively last year. I think there are things that Ware is going to be able to do potentially in the Heat system that even Derek Lively can't do. Like I just and I don't want to get I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. I've been the one that says, wait, okay, don't throw him in the starting lineup too soon. I know that the Heat didn't project him to even be doing this at this point, but that's part of the reason why I'm pulling off on my previous position because if I don't think it's just a squirrel thing, even as we joke about it. Like he's legitimately earned these minutes with the work he's done
100%.
behind the scenes, right? And the way that they talk about him and the way that he's gathering information like a sponge, he's taking it. He wants to get better. He's taken the tutelage of their bigs from the past. They haven't even had a full off season to work with him where they could get him in from the very beginning of this thing and go through the details of the things he needs to get better at, like screening, like rebounding with two hands, all these kind of little details that are going to make him better. And then the weight gain, which is going to come. Okay, they'll figure out a way to get at least 10 pounds and 10 stronger going into next season. I just think it's harder to find someone like that, and I do think it unlocks Bam. Now, Bam may have other ideas. He may just want his guy here. He. I don't know how hard he's pushed on them in the past, but that would be my line. And so, as much as I wouldn't want to lose Nico, I think if you're talking about really fast forwarding this thing and having Fox and Hero and Bam and Ware, and that becomes sort of your cornerstone, um, I could absolutely be talked into that. Okay. Because again, you're talking about 27, 27, 25, 20 as your core, and you've got the positions filled. You have your point guard playmaker who can defend. You have a two guard who's proven this year that he can be an efficient scorer and bounces back. He's been consistent this year, with the exception like 3 or 4 games. He has not had a lot of dog games this year. I'm talking about Tyler. And then the Bam and Ware connection, where you finally get Bam to the position that he really wants to play. Then you find a 3 and D to go with that. And your goal, you can plug anybody into that. You can plug Haywood into that. Okay. Like I think, obviously they would, and you have Duncan still here as a shooter if you want to plug him in there with that. And you can play Duncan some at the 3 with that group along with Fox. So to me, I look at it and I say, if it costs you Nico and Jaquez, okay. If it costs you Ware or Tyler, I agree with you about the Tyler part. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think any of it's going to happen, by the way. I just want to be
Mhm.
clear on this. I think I'm right. I think the most likely scenario is he's in San Antonio and Jimmy Butler is moved for, you know, flexible, a little bit more flexibility and a lot less headache. I think that's where this is ultimately headed, but it's something we felt we needed to talk about. All right, we do need to get to the game tonight, though. So appreciate it, Alex. Our sponsors, cousinsusa.com, realestateshopfl.com. Look for more from both going forward, and make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.